So this is Fog of War. This is a podcast that is dedicated to the way the knowledge is produced and the knowledge is created in times of conflict in modern world. It's an incredible pleasure and incredible delight to be joined by my former colleague, by my friend, Yanina Korniienko, who has just released a movie about Ukrainian journalist Viktoriia Roshchyna, which is called Vika's Last Assignment, together with Reporters Without Borders, Suspilne and Grate, as part of Slidstvo.Info. So in this movie, the team basically traced Viktoriia's path, beginning from her captivity, where she was taken by the Russians on the occupied territory, and up to the eventual murder, basically, I will call it this way, by the Russian law enforcement officers who kept her in captivity. And today I would actually like to focus our conversation on Ukrainian journalists, on their safety, and eventually maybe drop a couple of questions about what actually it means for journalism to be under occupation, if it's even possible to have any objective or any sort of quality reporting from the occupied territories.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for invitation, Yaroslava. It's a pleasure to talk to you and see you. I think this issue is very complicated, and it raises a lot of discussions inside of journalist community in Ukraine, because we have to somehow show information, publish information about occupied territories. However, we don't have access. So the only way we can work is just collect OSINT findings. We use just OSINT tools to collect information. And it's obviously not enough to find, usually OSINT helps us to gather information about what Russians do on occupied territories, and usually it's their perspective. It's mostly it's how they present their presence in occupied territories. But we want to know truth. We want to find out what civilians, Ukrainians, thinking about their new administration, so-called, and no one published it online because it's really dangerous for them to publish. Otherwise, they would be kept and imprisoned and tracked by Russians. So, I usually use secret chats in Signal or in other safe messengers to be in touch with people from occupied territories who can give us some information. But Viktoriia, it's a journalist you mentioned. It's a journalist from our movie. We made a documentary about her. She's brave enough to go to occupied territories and show what's going on there, through her own reporting. It's Air Alert in Kiev. I will just.
Are you okay to continue?
Sound. Sorry.
Actually, are you okay to continue, or do you want to go to?
No, I'm fine. We can keep working. Yes. I hope it's nothing dangerous, because now we don't receive this CIA information anymore from United States, and we don't really they helped us to track these aircrafts called MiG, which is extremely dangerous, but probably it's not available anymore, and we will find out it was MiGs after
oh God,
they will, target something, but I hope not this time. So Viktoriia, she is brave enough. I say she is, because we don't have enough evidences of her death, and we still presenting information about her, considering she is alive, because all information we have is not enough reliable. So
basically the only reliable information you might have about her death is if Russians returned her actual body.
Yes.
Right. So from what I know, the only evidence that we have now, or like the only information that exists now, is the message that her dad got from the Russian authorities saying that she died with no reason, no anything. And the movie, I mean, I've watched it as well. It basically talks about what was happening to her, the tortures and everything, based on what witnesses say. Is that correct?
Exactly. This is for us. It's the only way to collect this information, and yes, the letter father received didn't have any additional evidences like some certificate of death or any medical conclusions, documents, whatever. And it looks like it's possible it is fake, but also it's the only communication from Russia we have right now. And I would say media sometimes say she is dead because based on these documents, but father preferred and family preferred to say she's still alive, as well as prosecutors. And yes, we collected all information through witnesses. We tried to find witnesses who was in the same cells with Viktoriia in prison and who probably talked to her before she was kept and imprisoned. And those people give us some information that she traveled to occupied territories to make a reportage, to make reporting and investigations about unofficial prisons on occupied territories, places of detention, I would better say. And she was curious about why people escape its wrong world. It's like why they disappear, why people disappear. And that was probably a reason why she was catched, because last time everyone saw her and talked to her is when she was on the Zaporizhzhia region, occupied territories, and she was near the Enerhodar. It's a city near nuclear weapon station.
Nuclear power plant.
Yes, power plant. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
Yes, in near Zaporizhzhia, and she investigated the detention center for workers from nuclear power plant. And after that, she was placed to unofficial these detention places in Melitopol, as we lately discovered, and she was tortured. So her body had the people who was with Viktoriia at this, the people who were with Viktoriia in the same cells in Taganrog, they said she arrived already with wounds. She had so someone cutted her hands and legs. She also tortured by
current.
Yes. Which is a very brutal way of torturing. And she also didn't receive enough help from people who work in prison workers. And she also didn't receive enough information from medical staff. So she always demanded some help. She demanded explanation why she is there. She demanded some pills to because she had she felt pain, and no one actually helped her. Finally, she becomes so weak, and she weighed less than 30 kilograms, and she became really weak. She couldn't go. She couldn't even stand up from the bed, wake up from the bed, and women from the same camera, they from the same cells, they helped her to stand up, and that's how she actually walked. Was able to walk, and finally she was placed to hospital. And she spent a few weeks in that hospital. After that, she was placed at the cells, but she was alone in those cells. She was like isolated from other people, so no one would see her or understand what health conditions she has. And that was the last time witnesses saw her.
So basically, her intention to go to the occupied territories was to expose these detention centers, these conditions under which people are held and under which people disappear. And she, like, you sort of helped her to finish this task by doing that job from your position, your perspective on her example. So, I mean, it terrifies me to say these words, but to some extent, she kind of gave journalism her life, because from what I remember, a lot of people remember her as somebody who was very devoted to her profession, up until even the way she died also helped to expose even more war crimes committed by the Russians, and actually expose those detention centers that she tried to show. But unfortunately, it happened like on her example.
Exactly. And, after we published a movie, a lot of people who don't really understand how this journalism work, don't know anything about journalist work. They wrote that she's crazy going to occupied territories. She felt in what she done. And I totally disagree with that. And as a journalist, I must say that it's normal for journalists want to show something that someone tried to hide. We expose hidden information, and occupied territories, unfortunately, now is a hidden information. No one has access to those territories. So she did her job. She did an excellent job. And in every different cases, for example, in other wars or armed conflicts in other parts of the world, journalists are able to go to occupied territories and filming what's happening there, unlike in Russia, because they totally closed this area, and every journalist on occupied territories, especially Ukrainians, they are under highest risk to be detained. And I made a previous movie about journalists in occupied territories, and it's about 5 people as a representative of all community. They from different regions, and they experience different kind of torturing, and a few of them been imprisoned for a short period of time. One of them, it's journalist from Melitopol. She was able to escape, but she was in the old lists. Lists is another way how Russians track journalists. So they already prepared before the war started. They already had lists of journalists and activists they wanted to detain, because it's a danger for them. They don't want journalists to spread information which is not really comfortable for Russia, and they cleaning area by killing or imprisoning journalists and activists. And so I would say those who stay in occupied territories because it's their home, they're also in danger, even though they don't do any active reporting. They just live at their homes. And Russia went to this, knocked in a door and arrested just because you are a journalist.
But then, coming back to Viktoriia, this was the thought that I also heard in a professional community and like journalistic community. It was that had she not gone there, she would have been able to create way more stories if she just were alive. As in, like, this risk is just not worth giving life for it. So, what would be your take on this?
So I work in Slidstvo. It's a part of OSSRP network. OSSRP is a huge network of journalists all over the world, and they have different investigative teams in different countries, and some of the teams working on really risky stories about drug trafficking, human trafficking, mafia, etc. And they really in danger. And what the main editor repeats every meeting is that no story worth your life. So if you see that risk is super high, you just don't do it, because when you're alive, you can do more better stories rather than just one, which will cost you life. So my personal opinion is that it's obviously don't worth it, but I think that analyzing Viktoriia's previous like stories, and she also was in captivity before. Let me check.
In 2022 in March.
Yes. In March of 2022, yes, she was, she had already been captured by Russian forces once
Berdansk, no?
Berdansk, yes. She was held for 10 days in occupied Berdansk in Zaporizhia Oblast. And despite that, she didn't stop traveling to occupied territories. But I think she didn't stop because she didn't expect it might be so dangerous and rude. Because when first time she was detained, Russians, they just imprisoned her for 10 days, and they didn't torture her the way they did next time. And she expected probably this is the worst what can happen to her. However, like that was kind of naive, but she was so in love with journalism from what I saw, because I also read some her like papers, what she sent to other colleagues, and she sent to different organizations, and she mentioned that this is her sense of life, and that she mentioned, I was in captivity before and I know what expecting me, but what to expect. But I think she didn't know what to expect because obviously it was different detention places. When she was detained first time, it was when just full-scale invasion started, and I would say occupied forces weren't really prepared for such cases like detention of journalists, and they didn't know what to do with them. And the same thing happened with some other journalist who was detained in the first months, but not with everyone. Like Dmytro Hiluk, who was, it's a journalist, Ukrainian journalist, who was catched by Russians in Kiev suburb of Kiev. So he is a journalist from Union. It's Ukrainian news outlet. So he was also imprisoned in I think it also was March, and he's still in prison, and Russians don't give him back. But also because they changed his status, so it also depends on what ground you are detained. So officially, Russians can't, arrest civilian society.
Yeah.
a civil society, and they need a reason for that. And usually for Ukrainian journalists in occupied territories, they say it's because they're terrorists or they have danger for safety or so on. So they just try to fake some criminal proceedings and use it as a ground for their detention. And in case of Viktoriia, she didn't have any official criminal proceedings. No one actually, explained her or explained to Ukrainian side why he was detained, and she had a status incommunicado, which means like no one actually explained why she is in prison. Unlike Hiluk, because he become, if I'm not mistaken, I would better double check it, but if I'm not mistaken, Russian lawyers came to him and said, if you will sign a paper and say you're a combatant, meaning you participate in armed conflict, like helped or to soldiers or whatever, you will be a part of exchange process, which is true. You become a part of exchange process between soldiers, but at the same time, you also become a I wouldn't say like you Russia own you. They can never give you back because you become their slave. You sign a paper that Russia decide if they want give you back or not. And that's a problem because for civilians there is no rules for detention, but they also have to give them back on different ways.
Yeah, but okay, returning to the issue of safety and going to occupied territories, because safety is probably one of the issues that is among the highest dangers for journalists and among the highest challenges for journalists working in the war area. So in the case of Ukraine, it starts with like the air alert that happens in the office while we're having this conversation, and ending with going to different points on the front line. So some journalists, they actually want to, and some even get to like the zero positions, meaning the actual battle line where they can see like visually the enemy. And Hans, I'm just wondering, like, on your take, where is this line between journalistic obligation, journalistic work, and the need to report the truth? Like, how far is it okay to go? Maybe for you personally, or you think that it should be okay to go?
I think there are some, international rules for journalists in war that you have to be provided with all safety equipment when you travel to a front line. You also have to have like a bodyguard or a security team. That's how usually foreign journalists work. But going back to Ukrainian outlets, who don't have so much budget as foreign agencies. We don't have any security teams. We usually travel by our own, and it's very good if we have an insurance. Sometimes journalists travel without insurance on the front line.
Yeah.
I think it's fine for us, like journalists accept it because we part of war. So we are citizens, and for us, it's a personal. So we don't really worrying about like we feel it is as our mission as citizens as well. So sometimes colleagues don't really demand from outlet as security team support, right? And they just travel by their own. So it's also an issue. Should we do that without specific safety guarantees, or shouldn't? And I think it's also a really thin line between safe war reporting and risky. But also, Russian war is different from other wars, I would say, somehow, because they target journalists specifically. And we have several cases when they targeted journalists who been clearly marked as a press on their helmets or their vests. So this is the first point. Another point is air alerts, as you mentioned, in the cities. Well, this is the conditions we live now. It's a part of our life, and it's just conditions, and we can't anyway fix it. It's not in our even like we just don't have enough sources to fix it, unfortunately. So we just adapt to these conditions. And the third way is when you actually travel to occupied territories, as Viktoriia. So I think we face with such issues every day, and I think it's already discussed a lot in different, these professional communities about how journalism during the war, is it objective journalist or not? Because we are, we live in the war, and it's hard for us probably to see it from other side, but at the same time, Ukrainian journalists are the best in finding information from occupied territories, from the battlefield, because we have our friends serve in army. We don't need to receive 10,000 permissions. We just call our friends, and we can access we can get access quickly to a frontline or whatever. We also have expertise about occupied territories because some of our relatives in this place, and we also can let's say doing some OSINT job better than foreigners, because we know language, which helps us to do good investigative job, because we know language. So yeah, I think it's like that.
And actually, my next question would be, kind of like something in the news now, let's say. So you've already mentioned that you don't have CIA information about what is actually being launched at Kiev and what is going on. We are already in a situation where the USAID funding has been suspended, most likely just simply cancelled. And I know that Slidstvo was under this kind of heat quite strongly. I mean, you posted it on your social media. And I wanted to ask you, basically, how does everything that is going on in the US influencing journalists and journalism in Ukraine, and specifically safety of Ukrainian journalists, since we started this topic, and since it's it's basically about people's lives as people who are doing their job at the front lines?
I would say I never used this safety support from foreign agencies. All times I traveled on the front line, it was just a few times. I not, a war reporter, but I think I had just vest and helmet, which was provided by our friend organizations from OSSRP at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and that was my protection, let's say. I think the administrative team in Slidstvo better know about these conditions, because probably we had some part of funding for insurances or for other issues that are important for such kind of reporting. But I would say the first comes up on my mind when we talk about this influence, it's of course funding of general work. So just existing of media. And the best Ukrainian investigative outlets, they are independent because they don't have an owner and they don't have, I would say, I would say they don't have owner or oligarch or whatever behind them. Unfortunately, they don't also have so much readers who will, subscribers who will pay for their journalism, just because Ukrainian society don't have this culture of pay for information. Usually, we donate for army, and I quite understand those people now, because when we ask them to donate for organization, it means they would, split this money or take from that donations and give it to us. And it's hard to say what is more important. I think donating to army right now is more important than donating for journalism. However, journalism is important. So a lot of big media are now in danger. I mean, they might close or they might change their finance models, or fire some people or whatever, which is really bad practices. And I hope it never happened. But we still don't know what's going on, like what will be next. And so I think this influenced a lot.
And I was going to jump in as well, because traditional forms of financing are under pressure in Western countries, which is advertising revenue. There's fierce competition. A lot of that's gone online. It must be so much worse and so much more difficult for Ukrainian media to get the normal commercial avenues to invest. So do we have a sense of how difficult it is? Do we have a sense also that with the cutting of US aid, of any specific projects, any specific sort of creativity or resilience in the field of journalism information that's already kind of been cancelled or put on hold?
You mean project that been
that would have gone ahead? Yeah, would have gone ahead, but now are under doubt or canned.
Yes, recently I saw that media called Svidomi. It's new media outlet, I would say, which is really professional. They write about good Ukrainian solutions, and they also make reporting from different cities all over Ukraine. It's a good example of reporting. They are, I would say, they put on pause or even closed for some period of time. That's what they mentioned recently, unfortunately. And we also saw that, I would say it influenced not only on journalism, it's also influenced on, like journalism. If we talk about newspapers or television, even on YouTube, we can find another financing models, which would be hard and painful, because we want it to be ecological, so we don't actually take toxic money or something. So it's hard to build, but it's still possible. And when we talk about organizations who support veterans, for example, or who support children who suffer from cancer, or who support any medical initiatives, or who support communities in who located close to war zone or whatever, they can't do this kind of business models, and they have to close. So what I heard is that such kind of initiatives been closed, especially connected to veterans, because when people decide where to put their money, they usually pay for those who fight right now, and they want to invest in army weapons, whatever, but not in some peaceful initiatives, which are also important, but but don't have so much attention. So this project's being closed faster than other. Some journalism organizations, they have some savings and it helps them to still be alive. But I think if all this all this situation with money from USA will be the same, probably we will see more organizations who will be closed.
You're making movies and you're basically working with the topic of journalists on the occupied territories. So all of them, some of them, or probably all of them, are being tortured, so we don't have enough information about them. As in the case of Viktoriia, we most likely she is dead, but maybe she's not. So there's really a lack of information. And well, I don't want to ask you how you feel about working on that as a journalist yourself, as a female journalist, but I would like to ask, has this work actually changed any of your views on any of the topics? And if so, which ones are those? So does this work make you look different on certain things, certain discussions, or like even global political situation that's going on in the world?
Yes, of course. And I think the war itself changed my attitude to certain situations, starting with I realized that my main goal is to be really useful and documenting history. So my focus before was about international corruption, which is still my main focus, but I still doubt which story now is more relevant. Sometimes, analyzing some financial schemes that been happened a few years ago, less relevant rather than what's happening right now on occupied territories. And I feel like historical situations happening right now, and I feel I need to write about that. Also, when I thought that I would probably apply for some scholarship abroad and will go studying. And I thought about that right before the full-scale invasion. When full-scale invasion happened, I realized that I'm already a journalist. I'm already here. I have some basic experience and what can be more useful and where I should be rather than here. And so it changed some of my future, let's say, and I never regret. However, I still think that all journalists need to have a rest and take some time to rest. And in international programs are really good option for that, because you still, keep develop your professional skills, but you have some time to, analyze it. And also, I think that, it's hard because we become more cynical, I think, all of us. And when we publish some story, I couldn't imagine we would have some kind of discussions in a team. Like for example, we decide what to put on cover, and we understand that if we will put just like this citation, it wouldn't actually, raise attention to a story. We need to find something more spicy. And sometimes we need to choose between, like, example, cutted hand and burnt child, and we analyze which audience will be attracted more. It's brutal, but unfortunately people tired from really hard content, and when they read about some wounds, they are not impressed because they read it every day. And we publish news stories which are very important, and we want people read it, and we need to adapt to audience, which we sometimes feel they want more shocking content, like what is new about deported children. like no one interested in it anymore. We already heard about that multiple stories, and you need to find a way how to attract a story for audience. I couldn't imagine it would be like that, and also it's about developing skills we never had before. Before the war, no one worked in our team as a war reporters. We still like Yaroslava was in right before the full-scale invasion, and you remember that.
I remember playing with the bulletproof jackets and being like, "Oh, this is so heavy."
Yes,
and that training that we had with that guy from NATO, where he was showing like limbs that were like torn, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is so bad!" Like, making lots of jokes about that.
Yes, and I remember that we laughed and discussed like how it can happen that we wouldn't have arm, like that's nonsense, and or we will see someone with such wounds, but next day we woke up with all the explosions and realized that was good. We passed these trainings, and after that we passed like a lot of other trainings. We had a lot of them. And we started to learn scene tools. We started to, improve ourselves in different kind of journalism, which we been prepared. Like we didn't prepare for that, right? So. So I think it helps us become more, I would say, multifunctional. Like journalists, like we have different tools, and we can write anti-corruption story. We can write a story about war crimes. We can make a movie. We can make just a story and whatever, like different types of content. I think this is the main power of influence. And also I would mention psychological conditions. What I see usually is that other, I have a psychotherapist, and I work with psychotherapists like all the time. I started before the war actually, and now it's become more regular. But some of my colleagues, even though I see they feel bad, they saying, "I'm okay. Like nothing wrong with me. I feel perfect. It's a war. Everyone feel bad during the war." And I think this is a dangerous when you don't realize you need already help, and when you realize it, it's too late to realize, right? So I think everyone, become a little bit mad.
I was going to jump in there because something you said there about, having to sit down and take the hard decisions about whether to choose this image or that image, and not so much thinking, which is, they're all aligned with some kind of truth, version of the truth, but you're thinking about the sort of narrative that's going to play, and you're thinking more about the recipient audience. How challenged does that become now when you have what's going on in the US? It absorbs a huge amount of media oxygen. We feel that in YouTube and in the sort of podcasting sphere. Whenever something big happens on the news, it just sucks out the attention. And also, the environment feels very abusive. The things that are being said, the things that are happening in the news. How do you sort of deal with that, and how does it affect these editorial decisions that you're having to make?
I wouldn't say we have a competition with Trump news, because it's something that's important for us as well, and we follow this news. I would say we just changed focus a little, and we get back to war crimes. So we started to make stories about war crimes on the beginning of full-scale invasion. We keep doing this, but last year we changed our focus more on internal politics, because it's become bad. Like we felt that of a president's office started to really abuse power a little bit, especially in this informational field. And we decided to make more investigations about internal politics before it became really bad. But right after, like few weeks before, just when everything happened with these discussions about funding, we realized that world a little bit forget about what happening in Ukraine right now and on occupied territories. So we switched focus back to war crimes, and we published more war crimes last weeks, translating it on English and trying to spread it more on foreign audience, just to show and remind here what you talk about. When you talk about occupied territories, do you actually understand what's happening there? Because they are saying that we should leave those territories for Russia, and that would be a deal. And case of Viktoriia Roshchyna shows that you would never know what's happening on occupied territories, because what happening to those who trying to reporting from there, and the only people who can report from there is, for example, BBC journalist who traveled to Russia, right, and tried to presenting a Russian side and become a part of propaganda. So, and if you want to know what's really happening there, look at Viktoriia case, look at the cases of other civilians who was killed or brutally tortured. So that's how this discussion changed our point of view. Talking about Ukrainian audience, I would say they also share more war crimes now, because this is the only way for us to communicate with the world. But also people like internal politics, and we feel like we have, two main directions. We try to, do war crime story and anti-corruption story, and then again war crime, and then anti-corruption, because I think the same mess happening in mind of usual Ukrainians as well.
I think that it's actually interesting, because one of the feedbacks that I get a lot from my research is that, but you're Ukrainian, you will be in favor of Ukrainian journalists, you will be in favor of kind of Ukrainian point of view, and you will not be critical enough in relation to your government. Ukrainian media do not report enough on the issues that Ukrainian government has. But it's actually so interesting, because the whole investigative media sphere is actually reporting on Ukrainian government. Many of them are translating the stories. I mean, I'm translating some of the stories for Slidstvo, and it's all there. So I just get the feeling that it's not that these media do not report on these things. It's just that people don't want to look there, because it's just easier to say that somebody's prejudiced and, kind of expect that locals will be prejudiced in relation to what's going on in their home, rather than actually go and see the real picture that, here there's like quite a few investigations. And I know that after some of your investigations about the Ukraine Security Service, like SBU, there were actual legal actions taken in relation to the officials that you did those investigations against. So while with the officials, it's kind of easier in a sense that you can have the actual legal actions and see them done by certain agencies. In the case of Russians, it's a kind of more like a long-term game, isn't it? Like with the war crimes, that you kind of identify them now, you expose them now, and you hope for them to face legal persecution for what they've done. Yeah, how does it feel? And how do you kind of adapt to this long-term game, rather than short-term kind of reaction to what you do?
I think it's less strategic decision, rather than when we see a war crime, we need to report it right now, because a few months later, victims will forget what they saw, and some evidence will be lost. So we try to get it and as soon as possible, and we're reporting war crime immediately, because we need to, film it right there and right now. When we talk about anti-corruption, so that's something I felt last year discussing it in our professional community on different conferences or workshops. That some journalists feel censor themselves. So they decide that it's not a time to write about corruption. Otherwise, world wouldn't give us money and support. And that's something that politicians use a lot. And this is an idea which roots of which is from governmental circles, not from journalism. They usually mark us as Russian helpers. If we publish something about government, they say you help Russia, and they're saying you publish about corruption, and it prevents that no one wants to support us. However, they forget that the fact they are doing corruption prevent to no one support us, not the fact we are reporting it. So just if you don't want such troubles, just don't make those troubles, right? This is very dangerous, I would say, dangerous situation when a lot of journalism self-censor themselves. And just when it become really bad, and we saw that some media been, completely ruled by government or pushed by government, or some of the journalists received these invitations to recruiting centers because of their work, or multiple other cases. I even forget that because we switched on this international level. But internal politics is getting worse, and I'm afraid it might get worse after, because we remember that the main enemy is Russia, but such bad practices inside of Ukraine also not helpful for us, and it also can bring us close to Russian practices. So I think we need to keep working on this as well. And probably why people from your research didn't saw so much content. Maybe it was a period of time when a lot of journalism self-censored themselves and just published war crimes, which is actually happening. A lot of teams switched on war crimes only. Pretending anti-corruption is less important, but one day we can wake up in totalitarian country and we wouldn't, we would have a new enemy, which is not good. So we need to, keep an eye on what's happening here as well, because a lot of journalists and activists and anti-corruption activists are now serve in army, and someone have to keep, be a watchdog here.
And if you had a chance to sort of, this is a bit probably not a question to you, but to actually American colleagues, but they ask about Ukrainians. And so let's ask one more question about Americans. Do you think American media are doing a good job now? Because, for Russia, it's a completely different topic. I don't want to go there. But for the US now, with everything that's going on, can the media be the actual, kind of leverage that could improve the situation?
The international politics?
At least the opinions within the US as such. Because, Trump was elected, right? Trump was elected by people, and he still has quite a lot of support. And so media are supposed to be one of these sort of things that prevents government from turning into authoritarian government. So this is something that is often Russian media are accused of that they didn't do a proper job. That's why it's one of the reasons why we have what we have there. So do you think that American media are doing the right job now?
Yes, I totally agree with you that the role of media is to observe and report any violations of human rights, of law. And we can see that in US now there are a lot of human rights violations and law violations. And the problem is, especially if we talk about this US media, is that they are really, like say, I would say correctly, split it on the groups. Like some of media are right wing, some of them left wing, so it's bad that some of the media officially Trump supporters, right? And that's a problem when you have an owner, probably, rather than when you don't have anyone behind the media. What usually Americans say that owner doesn't actually influence on a content, which is probably true, but I wish to see it now during these situations and to see how these Trump supporters will act, on these situations. And we saw some media actually, change their narrative a little bit against Trump, or like questioning Trump steps and decisions. So hopefully they will, take a right side and will be more objective. But we also have a social media, and I wouldn't say that all the responsibility on the media outlets, which is a huge part of responsibility, but probably it's already a multimedia world, right? And social media play a huge role. And this situation with Twitter, X, Grox, whatever, is also, play a huge role in that, because the algorithms in Twitter, let's say Twitter, because I started to use it as a Twitter. So it also helps Trump supporters, because they raise some tweets about of Trump supporters, especially Elon Musk, of course. He is like a self-media right now on the top. And even if you want to see some opposite opinions, you have to scroll a lot to see it, because Twitter will forcibly propose you that content they Elon Musk wants, let's say.
Yeah, I see. So thank you very much for being with us today. Jonathan, do you have any other questions?
No, just to encourage people to read Ukrainian media and get a balanced view, because I think the challenge, and this is one of the topics we talk about a lot, is I don't think you can divorce ownership from content and from the political framing of the narrative. So the best thing you can do is read external media and media from other countries, and I'm sure we'll put a bunch of links in the video here. And
and this being said, I would encourage people to watch a movie that Yanina has just released about Viktoriia, because I can't say it was a pleasure to watch this movie, but it is a pleasure that Ukrainian journalists are doing such a high quality job, and that such products, they emerge. And honestly, the details about this information in this movie were just incredible. So it was like a great job. And I would definitely encourage everybody to watch it. It has like English captions, so it's pretty much available in any other language.
And I do have, you might have covered this before, but I do have one little question there. When all the conversation seems to be about peace, and peace is a very loaded word here, and we see it in the media all the time. But what your reporting does, what your movie does, it says that if there's peace without justice, if there's peace under occupation, that's an oxymoron. It cannot exist. It's not a real thing. Is that your intention? And do you feel that your work is more important now than ever, given that the idea of peace and justice are not talked of in the same sentence?
Yes, I think that our idea is what to show that peace without justice doesn't actually mean peace. And I saw a lot of ideas from foreigners. The idea of forgiveness. That's what good Russians like to push. That we have to be kind, we have to forgive, and it's hard to say because explain it to Viktoria's father or explain it to other relatives of those people who was killed. Yes, if I get your question correctly, maybe I get it wrong. I think that what we try to present every time is that this is huge. It's not fair what happening, and it shouldn't be happened. And we, especially when Trump tried to victimize Russia and make us as a cause of war, it's important to show that that's vice versa, and their responsibilities in Russia, and that any ideas of peace that they propose to us is actually sounds for us like die. Just die, and no one will be, bothered anymore. That's how it felt.
Mm. Well, thank you very much for being that open, and thank you very much for sharing these things. And yeah, once again, please do watch the movie. Please do follow our channel if you want more of these conversations. We will invite Yanina later, maybe with. I would like to say something more cheerful, but it's corruption or work. So, but it was really a great pleasure to talk to you, and really great pleasure to have you with us for this conversation. Yes, and if you enjoyed the conversations, please do share with whoever might be interested in it as well. And thank you, and see you soon.